Hello, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Becca and today I have my March wrap up. So in March I read a total of 9 books, which I'm really happy with. It was a bit slumpy at the beginning of the month, but as we got towards the end I had a really good reading week. Some of these books I do have book diaries for, so I will let you know about that, and then some of them I've read for Superhero-a-thon, which runs from I think the 25th of March to the 8th of April or something like that. For those books I'm just going to tell you what I read and the star ratings and just like a little brief bit on them, because I will be wrapping up Superhero-a-thon at the end of the 2-week period, so I don't want to be too repetitive and be going into detail about these books twice. My page count for the month was 2,812 pages, and that broke down to an average of 90 pages per day. For demographics, I did read 6 YA books and 3 adult books. For formats, I read 6 normal books, 1 short story collection and 2 graphic novels. And for a genre breakdown, I read 3 fantasy, 1 paranormal, 3 sci-fi, 1 contemporary and 1 magical realism. So let's just get into the books. The first book that I read in March was Everless by Sarah Holland. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. This is a young adult fantasy novel about a society where blood is used as currency. And the way this works is that blood is extracted from your body and turned into coins, which then you can spend as you would normal currency. I did do a book diary on this as well because it is a 2018 release, so I will link that above if you want to check that out. However, it is spoilery, as with most of my book diaries, so only check it out if you've actually read this book. As for what I thought of this, I did really enjoy it. I liked the love interest. There's a bit of a love triangle going on, but I liked it because I didn't feel like it was obvious who she was going to choose. And while I thought the premise was exciting and interesting and I really enjoyed the book, I don't think it was overly original, and it is just kind of another young adult fantasy. However, if you like those kind of books, you will really like this. Criticisms for this and the reason it got 4 stars and not 5. The ending was very rushed and everything sort of came together in 3 or 4 chapters. So I feel like that could have been taken slower. However, I do know that with debut authors, you do have a word count or a page count or whatever. So you can't always develop the plot as much as you'd like to. This has been compared to Red Queen, and I do understand the comparison. There are 2 brothers, although they are lords and not princes, like in Red Queen. The girl comes from a peasant background and sort of goes to Everless to make money for her dying father so that he can have his sort of life back because of the blood currency thing. And there is a little bit of the theme of betrayal in this, and the main character does seem to have some sort of power, although that is not something that is common in this world. The first chapter of this was essentially the same as A Court of Thorns and Roses and The Hunger Games. Jules is in the woods and she's hunting to feed herself and her father, which, like I said, we see in A Court of Thorns and Roses and The Hunger Games. The only difference is she uses a dagger and not a bow and arrow. I do understand that this is used to sort of convey a sense of poverty and a life or death situation kind of thing, but I do think that it is a little bit overdone for me to be able to just draw the comparison straight to 2 books I've already read, and there is a lot of YA fantasy that I haven't read, so who knows how frequent that trope actually is. I felt like the clues throughout the plot of this were a little bit obvious. Some things like that pertain to the plot reveal, I did pick up on a lot of things, especially to do with one of the lords, but I did like this book. Like I said, I liked the plot and the characters were pretty good, and it has sort of a European feel to it that I really liked, so I will be picking up the sequel to this. It was really good. Nothing like groundbreaking or astounding, it is just a YA fantasy, but if you do like those kind of things, if you like Red Queen, A Court of Thorns and Roses and things like that, then I think you'll like this. Then I read Betrayed, which is the second book in the House of Night series by PC and Kristen Cast. I gave this 3 stars. This is the book that I'm reading to fulfill my 2018 goal to read the oldest books on my Goodreads to read shelf. This main character honestly has more boyfriends than Selena Sardothian, and if you have read the Throne of Glass series, you will understand what I mean. I don't know how to feel about this because I do like the plot. I feel like it's a pretty unique take on vampires that I haven't seen before. It could have been done before, I just haven't personally seen it, and in my young teenage years I did read a lot of paranormal, so I have read quite a bit of the genre. I really, like I said in my February wrap up when I read the first book, I really like the Wiccan aspects of the culture, and I like that it's not your typical take on vampires. However, the writing is just really bad. The character writing is probably the worst aspect of this to me. I find the dialogue to be quite flat, maybe. Sort of the characters aren't distinguishable from each other, which I find makes it quite difficult to read and sort of keep track of who everybody is. These are sort of the quick reads, they're easy to digest, but I wouldn't necessarily say they were good. I have now made the decision, as I read this at the beginning of the month and I have yet to pick up the third book in this series, that I am going to DNF this series after I've read the third book. And the reason I'm waiting until after I've read the third book is because I've already set it in my TBR. I've set the third and the fourth one, but I'm not going to get to both. So I'm just going to read the third one and then I am going to DNF this series, because since I read this book at the beginning of the month, I have no questions about the plot. I have no burning desire to continue. And with all the books that I put on my April TBR, I realised that there are a lot of really good books that I'm really excited to read. And this is a 12-book series and I own 8 of the books. So I don't really want to invest any money in buying the remaining 4 of the books, and also I don't really feel like I want to dedicate the time to 12 books of this series. If I am desperate to find out what happens, I will just look up a synopsis, but these, I think I would have enjoyed them a lot when I was younger, which is kind of what I expected, but now they're just not for me, they're not my preferred genre, and I can't really get over that I don't like the writing. Next I read Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. I gave this a 5 stars. This is the 4th time I've read Red Queen, so I don't really have too much to say about it. This is a fantasy or dystopian. I'm not really sure which it classifies as, because to me it reads like a high fantasy, but it is set in the future. Like Victoria Aveyard has specifically stated that this is a futuristic type of, I want to say alternate future, but that's not a thing because the future hasn't happened yet, but it's a way that she sees the world could sort of evolve. I believe it stems from an alternate history from around the Roman time period and what could have maybe happened if things had been different. So I did give this 5 stars. However, the more I read it, the less I like it. That is mainly because I feel like the best parts of this plot and the first book in this series is plot twists and the theme of betrayal that runs through it, and you're not really anticipating what's happening. And obviously by the 4th time around I am no longer surprised by the plot twists and the betrayals and things like that. So I would probably give it a 4 stars if I rated it on my last read. However, it isn't the book's fault that I can't read it for the first time again, so my rating does remain at a 5 star. For those of you who don't know, this is about a society where there's reds and silver bloods. The silvers have powers and they're an elite, and the red bloods are sort of your normal average humans. However, one of the red bloods, Mare Barrow, discovers that she has powers, and she's sort of swept up in silver society as they try to hide the fact that she's a red with powers she shouldn't have. But yeah, I do still really like this. It doesn't have as much impact as it did the first time around, but still 5 stars. Then we have Otherworld by Jason Segel and Kirsten Miller. I did give this a 3 stars. This is a virtual reality sci-fi, and it is about this new virtual reality game called Otherworld that is apparently a new take on an old game, which I think is like World of Warcraft, and a company has taken it and developed it into a virtual reality software. So it's sort of next gen gaming. We have our main character who is, I believe he's an 18-year-old sort of loser that lives with his parents and is obsessed with a girl who lives in the woods, and something happens to her and he has to delve into Otherworld to rescue her, and it turns out that the virtual reality game is actually more than it seems. I did actually really enjoy this, however there were quite a few flaws with it, which is what made me give it a 3 star instead of a 4. I will still definitely continue with this though, because I did enjoy it. There were just a few little niggly things that meant that I couldn't really give it a 4 stars because of the flaws. This did remind me a lot of Lit RPG, which if you don't know is sort of like books for gamers, where if you listen to them in audiobook they have like the sound effects and they tell you like the stats of the character, and it's essentially like an RPG game but in book form. So instead of playing it, you listen to what the character's doing or read what the character's doing. And I did start listening to an audiobook from the Chaos Seeds series a while ago, and this is what this sort of reads like to me. So if you like this, you might like the Lit RPG genre, and if you are a bit of a gamer then you might like Lit RPG. The only thing that I found is that it was repetitive and kind of slow moving, so I did stop listening to that audiobook, but I do think that the genre is a really good idea. I think I've heard a lot of people say that the main character is unlikable in this book, and I didn't particularly dislike him, but I do wish that people would stop perpetuating the trope of loser gamers, and that gamers are people that like live in their parents' basements and have no ambition and no drive, because I don't feel like it's true. Like, I'm a gamer, but I also have a full-time job, a business, a YouTube channel, and I read a ton of books. So it's not uneducated, lazy losers that play video games, and I do wish that trope didn't exist. I did think that this lacked some feeling in the writing. Throughout this, a few characters do die, and some of them were my favourite characters in the book. However, I didn't feel anything. I think that this book is very, very fast-paced and action-packed, so when you have moments like that where maybe you'd like to reflect on this big thing that happened, you don't really have the time to do it. There is a chapter in this called Imperium, and between pages 305 and 308, the main character finds the thing he's been looking for the entire book. Somebody dies, and there's a big plot reveal, and it happens within 3 pages, and it was so fast that I wasn't even sure if it was happening, and I had to sort of go back and reread it because I just didn't know. And that is the kind of thing that I mean, that maybe should have taken more time. Like, you spend 20 pages trekking through sort of one area of Otherworld, but then when things actually happen, there's not a lot of time spent dwelling on it. I also did think that the ending of this didn't really resolve anything, and the outcome of the entire happenings of the plot sort of made the entire book useless. It's like if you started the book and then you have an aim, you reach the aim, and then nothing at all that you've done mattered, and I didn't like that. And then I also didn't really understand the last paragraph, which had something to do with, is she called Basara? She was randomly mentioned that she was sleeping, and I didn't understand what the relevance of that was. So I did enjoy it, but definitely a lot of flaws. Then I read The Upside of Unrequited by Becky Albertelli, which is the last book that I'll be giving you a full breakdown on. I gave this one 5 stars. I'd like to say that I really, really hated Molly at the beginning of this. This book follows Molly, and she is one half of a set of twins, and they're sort of inseparable. And her twin sister is either a lesbian or bi, I'm not entirely sure which, but she does start to get interested in a girl who eventually becomes her girlfriend, and Molly is sort of missing her twin because her sister's all wrapped up in this new romance and leaves Molly behind. Molly is fat, so there's representation for that in here, but she's also extremely self-depreciative, and it's really irritating. There's points in this book where somebody close to her calls her fat, and she doesn't like that because she doesn't care that she is fat. She's happy with her body, she's comfortable and whatever. However, she's also obsessed with the fact that people think that she's fat. When she's talking to a love interest in this book, he asks her a question and she just completely blanks him. So she's really, really rude, and she just completely like shuts the conversation down. At one point, this love interest also asks her her opinion on something, and she just says something like, "Oh, I don't know, I don't think about it," and just like completely like kills the conversation. Then she gets offended when a character decides to pull out his phone instead of talking to her and says that it must be because she's fat. And I just really didn't like her character at all in all of this. But then it did get to a point in the book where I kind of realised that the reason that I hated Molly so much is because when I was a teenager, I was her. And I just felt really sad that I had to feel that way, and that people do feel that way, and Molly did feel that way. So she kind of represents a part of me that I hated about myself, in that I had all these feelings about myself that I no longer have anymore. But I just hate that that part of me ever existed, and sort of projected that into Molly and her and things like that. So I did give this 5 stars because of the relatability, and I did like the overall plot, but I really, really don't like Molly. However, that could be reflective of issues I have with myself. I would be interested to see what other people think of Molly's character, and maybe open up a discussion about this one. Because like I said, I did give it 5 stars, but I really hate Molly. So for Superhero-a-thon, I've read 4 books so far, and I have 2 left to read. And the first books that I read was Saga Volume 1. Gave it 5 stars, absolutely loved it. Bought volumes 2, 3 and 4. Read volume 2, 5 stars, absolutely love it. So in love with these comics. And why didn't I read them earlier? I've had Saga on my shelf for over a year and not bothered to pick it up, and I literally was just blown away by this. It is the best thing that I've read all year, and I just can't wait to continue on this journey. I am pacing myself because I've added volumes 5, 6, 7 and 8 to my birthday wish list, so I don't want to run out before my birthday. And then obviously like I have to wait till October for volume 9. So I'm pacing myself on these, and I'm reading one every Saturday morning. So these are absolutely phenomenal. And If you are someone like me who doesn't like graphic novels or doesn't really get on well with them, I would still recommend Saga because it really is that good. And the other 2 books I read for Superhero-a-thon, the first one is Assassin's Blade by Sarah J Maas. 5 stars, obviously, and I will put the link to my book diary up above. And What Is Not Yours Is Not Yours by Helen Oyeyemi. This is a magical realism selection of short stories. Gave this 2 stars. I really liked one story, didn't really like anything else, although the writing is really beautiful. Like I said, I will wrap this up properly in my Superhero-a-thon wrap up, but I finished this and I gave it 2 stars. So that's everything for my March wrap up. If you've read any of these, then please let me know down below. I am sorry that this is so long. I tried not to ramble, but I guess that failed. As usual, please don't forget to like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you want to. If you head into the description box, you can find a link to my Goodreads, Instagram and Twitter if you'd like to follow me on any of those. And also a link to my Bookish body butter and candle website and the Instagram for that if you're interested in any of that stuff. That's it from me today. Bye!